Well, welcome everyone. Tonight we're talking about working with autosomal DNA matches for beginners, and this is really a part one. I don't know when I'm going to get to part two, but there will be a part two. So this is just the beginning of the beginning, so to speak. All right. For those that are really beginners, maybe you're saying, what is autosomal DNA and where can I get my DNA tested? Well, there's the four major companies that will all test your autosomal DNA, and those are Ancestry DNA, Family Tree DNA, and they have what's called the Family Finder test, MyHeritage DNA, and 23andMe. And so any one of those that you have done an autosomal DNA test then. And briefly, the autosomal DNA is called that because it is located on the 22 pair of chromosomes that are known as autosomes. That's just a little fun piece of trivia. Your autosomal DNA test will look at those 22 chromosomes, and you get one of those pair of chromosomes from your father and one from your mother. If you work out the math, this would work out to 50% of your DNA, of your autosomal DNA, is coming from your father and 50% is coming from your mother. Shown in a different light, this is a chart that may help you to visualize it a little better. So over on the left, you have the person that has taken the DNA test. And by the way, males and females can take this test. There's occasionally some question about, is this only for males? Is this only for females? No, this is for anyone. Anyone can take an autosomal DNA test. So you can see that the person that tested is there on the left. And then over next to that, you can see the parents branching off, father and mother. And remember, you get 50% of your autosomal DNA from father and 50% from mother. Now, if you take that same idea and go back to the next generation back, you have 4 grandparents. And so you're going to have about 25% of your DNA from each grandparent. So it takes it in half from what you get from your parents to 25% from each grandparent. And then in the next generation back to the great-grandparents, these are the parents of your grandparents. You have 8 of those, and you're going to inherit roughly 12.5% from each great-grandparent. And you can keep going back the generations and doing this math to see how much DNA you would share with a second great-grandparent or a third great-grandparent. And by the time you get to your 5th, 6th, and 7th great-grandparents, you're going to be inheriting such a small amount of DNA from that person, it's probably not going to be measurable by this test. So you inherit DNA from those ancestors for sure, but it's just not going to be measurable on this test in most cases. And so this test is really helpful for looking at relationships with maybe relatives who are related to your 5th great-grandparents and 4th and 3rd and 2nd. But once you get back past your 5th or 6th great-grandparent level, this is not going to be a test that's going to help you a great deal with figuring out those further away relatives. Now, real briefly, how can you use autosomal DNA in your genealogy? And this is just, 1 or 2 little points here. And there's a lot more that could be said about this, but I'm trying to keep this for a beginner level. So autosomal DNA can help you verify your genealogical tree. So you have a tree that you put together, maybe through talking to relatives, through looking at census records and birth, marriage, and death records and obituaries. And so you've done research on your family and you've identified the names of your relatives and you've entered them on your tree. When you get DNA matches, that descend from your genealogical ancestors, that is usually a way that you're verifying that your genealogical research is correct, because you shouldn't have DNA matches to those people if your tree is wrong. So basically you're kind of checking off the boxes of, yeah, I've got my tree right in this area because I found DNA matches to that family. Adoptees can also use the autosomal DNA test to help them find their birth family. And that's not really something we're going to cover in this presentation. I have given presentations on that, and those are on YouTube. And I think Kurt showed you how to get to our YouTube channel earlier in his introduction. Now, so what do I mean by that? So here we see my genealogical tree. So again, these are people that I either know I've met them in person, my parents, my grandparents, and I've met a couple of my great-grandparents, or I have talked to relatives and they've told me, well, you know, my grandparents were named such and such, or I was able to find genealogical records that said, these are the parents of so-and-so. So for instance, on my tree here, I have a pair of second great-grandparents named George Brown and Sara Kennedy. And my father actually knew Sara Kennedy when he was a boy. So he knew of her existence, he knew her. And like I said, I have genealogical records stating that they are the parents of Alice Brown, my great-grandmother. I also have DNA matches that link me to this couple. And so this is showing you the chart. So you can see up at the top, we've got George Brown and Sara Kennedy. They're a married couple, and they had a number of children. And I'm descended from Alice Brown here in the middle. You can see me at the bottom there. She's my great-grandmother. And her brothers and sisters were Fred, James, Albert, Estella, Ida Mae, and Harvey. And I have a DNA match to a descendant of Albert. You can see that person is TS over on the left side of the screen. And then over on the far right hand of the screen, I have a DNA match to a descendant of James Brown, and that's J there. And then I also have two DNA matches to descendants of Fred Brown. They're not showing their names, but it is showing us in the middle there, right next to Alice, two DNA matches coming down from Fred. As of yet, I don't have any DNA matches to descendants of Estella or Ida Mae or Harvey, but I could in the future have DNA matches to those siblings of my great-grandmother as well. So the fact that I have DNA matches to my great-grandmother's siblings is solidifying the fact that George Brown and Sara Kennedy and their set of children are relatives of mine. These are ancestors of mine. I had them on my genealogical tree, and now I have them on my DNA tree as well. So those descendants of George and Sadie that were listed on the page there, I think it was J and TS, they descend from George and Sadie also. So that means that they inherited DNA from George and Sadie just like I did. And so because we both descend from George and Sadie, we have both inherited DNA from that couple, and we will share DNA with each other because we are third cousins, second cousins once removed, something like that, according to that chart that I just showed you. And second cousins once removed and third cousins will share amounts of DNA. So this is one way that DNA will help you. And so a lot of your matches are going to be, your DNA matches are going to be people like this, people like these descendants of George and Sadie. And your job is to figure out what ancestor couple your DNA matches actually descend from. So let's go ahead and get started. these are, like I said, beginner steps. And so you can do different things if you're more at an intermediate level or even an advanced level. But I really want you as a beginner to get acclimated with your DNA testing company's website and get acclimated with their different pages that they have where they are displaying your DNA matches and what the different features of those pages are. I also want you to learn about estimated relationships, and I want you to learn how to identify known matches and to sort matches into groups. And we'll go over this step by step. The first company that I'm going to look at, we're going to look at all 4 of the companies. We're going to go in depth into Ancestry, and we're going to go less in depth with the other 3, but we are going to cover all 4. So with Ancestry DNA, your first step is to familiarize yourself with their website and with your DNA matches page. And this is what the DNA matches page will look like. And instead of my name at the top, of course, it will say your name. At each of the companies, your match list is arranged in order of closest matches first. And so your top matches should be at the top of the list. And then at the very bottom of the list will be the person that is most distant related to you, basically. And depending on the company, you could have thousands and thousands of matches. I believe that at Ancestry, I have something like 20,000 matches. I have not gone through every single one of those. And as a beginner, you don't want to be spending your time down at the bottom of your match list. As a beginner, I want you to be spending your time looking at your top matches, the people that it says that you're close matches with, your first cousin matches with, your second cousin matches with, third cousin matches with. Those are the people that I want you to really focus your time on as a beginner. There could be a time when you do get down to the bottom of your match list. I will say that I have not gotten there yet, but I have made some visits down to the bottom of my match list, and I've seen what's down there. But I can spend most of my time even on my closer matches as well. And so these are the people that you're definitely closely related to, and you should be able to figure out your relationship with. And so I want you to have success. I want you to have, good experiences with trying to work with your DNA, and working with those really distant matches is not usually going to be that fruitful for you. So I want you to be practicing on the closer matches that you have an actual chance of figuring out who they are and how you're related to them. Now, so just as far as, like I said, I want you to get really familiar with whatever company it is that you tested with, to get familiar with their website, the way that they're presenting the matches to you, and the different features on the match page. So on this Ancestry match page, there's all kinds of things to click on here. You can click on lists, you can click on map, you can click on unviewed, all these filters. We're not really going to talk about those tonight, but all of this stuff down here you can click on too. You can click on view match, you can click on the family tree, you can click on this close family button, you can click on the name of your match over here. You can click on this plus button over here. So get familiar with that and just click on things. Don't be afraid to click on things. And if you find yourself lost, you can always go back to the home page and start all over again. You can always liberally use the back button. So the back button on your browser will take you back to the previous screen that you were on. And so you may, find yourself lost, but if you do the back button, generally speaking, you're going to find your way back again to where you were before. So, like I said, this is the Ancestry match page, and we're seeing my top 3 matches. And I've blocked out their names, and you will notice that throughout this talk tonight, I have blocked out the real names of people. And so I'm using pseudonyms for them, or I'm using initials because I don't have their permission to show their name. And so it's a privacy issue. The middle column here is estimated relationship, and then this column here is family tree of match. I already know who MJ is, so I'm not really going to look into that tonight because it's a known family member of mine. We're going to look at NG, we're going to look at DP a little bit. But first of all, we're going to talk about how the relationships are estimated. And hopefully you will understand when you see this dash here, close family dash first cousin, first dash second cousin. This means that they don't know your precise relationship to that person. And they're making kind of an educated guess, and they're estimating it as somewhere in the neighborhood of first to second cousin. Could be a first cousin, could be a second cousin, could be a number of other relationships. And the dash is really cluing you into that, reality. So don't jump to the conclusion that this is definitely a first cousin. You don't know that yet. You have to kind of investigate it and try to figure it out. One of the things you can do at Ancestry is you can click on the relationship. So here's NG, which we were just looking at a minute ago. And it says she's my first dash second cousin. If I click on first dash second cousin, this screen will open up. And this is really handy. And they haven't always had this. So this is kind of a newer feature of Ancestry. And it says that NG and I share 369 centimorgans. Now, centimorgan is the unit of measurement for DNA, and it's abbreviated CM. And then here, they kind of spell it out for you. How did we estimate this relationship between you and NG? And they talk about possible relationships, and then they give you the probabilities. So 77% of the time, this relationship between me and NG would be one of these options here. But 22% of the time, it could be one of these options here. And there's actually more. See, it says see more. So it's really quite a spectrum of relationships that there could be between me and NG. It's not cut and dry at all. And it's not like, oh yeah, she's my first cousin, or oh yeah, she's my second cousin. She could be a number of relationships. So really, you have to think through how you might be related to some of these people, because the testing company is just giving you an estimate, and then it's really up to you and NG to figure out how you might actually be related. So they don't know how exactly you're related. So like I said, they are estimating it based on the amount of DNA you share in centimorgans. And most of the companies will allow you to see how they came up with that, like Ancestry just did. Now, there's a couple tools that will help you to estimate the relationship also, and you should know about those, and you can go and play with them. The first one is at dnapainter.com. This is a website that you can get at for free to use this tool. They do have some paid features at the website, but the Shared Centimorgan Project is a free feature. So at the Shared Centimorgan Project, you would just type in 369 centimorgans, or however many centimorgans you share with a match, or you could do a percentage of DNA also to get a list of possible relationships ranked by probability. Then there's a second tool that I like to use. It's called, it's from the DNA Detectives Facebook group, and it's called the DNA Detectives Green Chart. It's basically what people call it. You can Google DNA Detectives Green Chart and it will come up, and you will find it online, shared in multiple places, and you can download a copy for yourself. And it only gives you the most likely relationships. So the Shared Centimorgan Project is giving you every conceivable relationship that there possibly could be. And sometimes it's like over board for some people. They look at it and they're like, it confuses them. And so I find the green chart to be easier to use if you tend to get overwhelmed. But just know that it's not giving you every possible relationship. It's giving you about 95% of the possible relationships, but it's not giving you those outer, less probable relationships. So this is what the shared centimorgan tool looks like at dnapainter.com. So again, you are entering up here in this box the number of centimorgans for your match, or the percentage that you share with your match. And then it will give you a readout of what the likely relationships would be. And this is what the DNA Detective's green chart looks like. So again, you're reading the chart from left to right, and you're going over here to this range and you're saying, I share 369 centimorgans with NG. So it's probably either here or here. Even though this says 360, I'm going to say it's right on the border there. So my relationship with NG is probably in this group, but it could be in this group as well. So these are the relationships here. So you should familiarize yourself with both of those tools. And again, just kind of play around with them and try to like look at different matches that you have and look them up on these different tools and see what you come up with, just for fun. All right, now the other thing you need to know how to do is to view your match page with an individual match. So at most of the companies, you can click in to view more information about each match. So we were talking about NG. Here's NG again. And if I want to see more information about my match with NG, I can click on her name. I can also click on view match over here. Both of those are going to take me to a new screen with more information about NG and myself. So here is the individual match page between me and NG. And again, you can see there's a lot of information here. And so you want to familiarize yourself with what this individual match page is telling you. You want to click on the things that are clickable. So these blue highlighted items, those are all clickable. This is clickable. This is clickable. Expand tree is clickable. This ethnicity is clickable. This shared matches is clickable, and so forth and so on. There's lots of different features on this page, and you want to look at all of them. And just, again, like I said, get yourself familiar with what they do. Use the back button if you get lost and you can't figure out where you're at. Or go back to the home page of Ancestry and start over. You can do that as well. No harm, no foul. But this is what you need to be doing so you understand what you're looking at. You can see that NG has a small tree here, and I have kind of privatized it a little bit. And I don't recognize any of the people's names on her tree. So I don't know how I'm related to this person as of right now. Okay, identifying your matches. So that will be our next step. There are easy ways to identify matches, and then there are more complicated situations. So because we're beginners and we're talking about just beginning working with your matches, what I want you to do is easy identifications. So easiest thing to do is look at your matches and say, do you recognize their name? You know, a lot of us have close relatives that have tested. So we'll see that our Uncle Bob is listed there, or our Aunt Maud, or our cousin Betty. And so you can quickly identify some family members who have already tested. You can also look at their family tree. Ancestry in particular has a lot of family trees of the matches. So when it says view tree, you know, click on their tree, look at their tree and see whether you recognize the surnames, recognize the common ancestor hints. Ancestry will give you some common ancestor hints, and we're going to look at that in a minute. if you see a name in the tree that rings a bell with you, you could do a little research on it, depending on how much time you have and how much energy you want to spend. So we're just trying to do easy identification at this point. And you want to systematically work through your match list from the top going down, I would say, to maybe your third to fourth cousins. And you want to try to identify the ones that you can easily identify. You're going to skip over the people that have no tree, the people whose names you don't recognize, or if they have a private tree. And you're going to skip over those who have a tree, but you don't see any surnames in common at all. And you can't make, any notion of how you might be related to that person. Just skip that. And like I said, we are going to have a part 2 to this talk. And in part 2, we'll talk about what to do with some of those pesky matches where, you can't easily figure out who they might be. And after you make an identification, so let's say, you notice that Uncle Bob has tested, you want to make notes about that identification for your own reference. Your match could take down their tree at any time. So you don't want to rely on their tree to always be available to you. I have seen trees disappear. I have seen people edit their trees in such a way that they made some of it private that wasn't private before, and things like that. So you want to make notes for yourself. And then I myself am not that advanced in age, shall we say, but I find myself forgetting more and more these days. And you don't want to spend, 20 minutes figuring out who one of your DNA matches might be, identifying who they might be, and then say to yourself, oh, I'll remember who that was, and then log out and then log back in a couple months later and realize that you have forgotten who that DNA match was, and you have to go through the whole process all over again. No, save yourself a bunch of trouble and make notes about it now. And there's a way to do that in the Ancestry interface. You also want to create a group, and you can group your matches at Ancestry and MyHeritage. The way I like to do it is I want to put in the common ancestor couple that you descend from. So if both of you are descending from the same couple and you've identified who that couple might be, that's the match, that's the group name that I give the group. So I'll show you that in a minute. And then you want to make sure you add the match to the correct group. So here we are again. We have moved down from NG because remember I said I looked at NG's tree and I have no idea who she might be. So we're skipping NG and we're going to DP. He's the next match. He's also a pretty high level first to second cousin match. And we're going to view the match. Now, he's the next person in line, but I think we have a good chance with DP because I recognize his surname. His surname is Porter. And remember, I'm privatizing this, so that's not really his surname, but we're calling him Porter. And I realized that my mom's cousin is married to a Porter. And I think that this guy is a descendant of my mom's cousin who married the Porter. So I want to look at the match with DP some more. So when I view the match, you can see that DP has entered a tree. And I've privatized a number of the sections of the tree. So I'm only showing you the section that applies to me. And down here at the bottom on DP's mother's side, we can see that DP is descended from Jason Willison and Jesse Lepper. And I recognize those names. Those are my great-grandparents. Because this is Ancestry, we have this common ancestor hint over here. And Ancestry and MyHeritage will both do something like this, where they will look at my tree and they will look at the matches tree, in this case, DP, and they will say, can we find a common ancestor between the two trees? And in this case, they're saying, yes, we did. And they explain it all right here for you, that DP and I could be related. Now, that's the word that they use. DP could be your second cousin. And that is kind of to cover them in case, I have my tree wrong or DP might have their tree wrong. So it's a possibility. And it's a good possibility because in this case, I know who DP is. I think I've met him before. And like I said, I know who his mother was and so forth. So this is all correct. And Ancestry has done me a huge favor by looking through those trees and giving me this hint. So you want to, usually what you want to do when you get one of these common ancestor hints on your DNA is you want to view the relationship. So they will show you exactly how they think you are related to that person. So here we have more information about it. And they're saying that he's related to my great-grandfather, Jason, and his wife. They don't have the wife listed here, but Jason and Jesse. And you can see that here's my relationship to Jason and Jesse is through my grandma Helen, through my mother, and to me. And then DP is over here. He comes down through Betsy, and then there's his mother, Private, and then there's DP. So this is how we are second cousins. We both come from the same great-grandfather, and our grandmothers were sisters, and then our mothers were first cousins. And so DP is my second cousin. So like I said, Ancestry and MyHeritage will provide those tree hints. The other companies do not. But remember that they're trees of your matches. And so we've all seen trees that have been wrong. So we're kind of keeping that in mind as well. And you can always go back and decide that the tree hint is incorrect. But it's a good way to kind of get you thinking about your relationship to these matches and seeing whether it could be possible. So record keeping, remember what I said. We want to make notes about this. Now that we've identified who DP really is, we want to make a note about it. And we want to create a group and put him in that group, because I want to group all of my DNA matches as much as possible based on how I'm related to them through the common ancestor couple. So this is the match page again between me and DP. And up at the top here under message, and this is where I could send DP a message if I wanted to. But under that, I can add a note and an add to group. So add a note. This is a note that's specifically for me. No one else can see this note. And when I click on add note, it comes up with this, and I can just enter whatever I want in there. So I try to be as specific as possible so that I am leaving a breadcrumb trail for myself. And remember what I said about our memories. Some of our memories, like mine, are just not what they used to be. So I don't want to have to go through this again and try to figure out who DP is all over again. So I wrote down the whole line of descent. And remember, DP could take down his tree at any time. So I have copied this information from his tree. So DP is Dan Porter, his mother is Cecily, and remember these are fake names. Cecily's mother is Aunt Betsy. Betsy was the daughter of my great-grandparents, Jason and Jesse. And those are their real names. So I have spelled it all out here, and then I could just save this in the note. And that way I come back to it, I can easily read the note again, and it makes sense to me. Now, I also want to create a group. So I've got to add to group right here. And then it comes up with this and it says create a group. So I need to create the group first. And I want the group to show, I want to put DP in a group with all the other people who are descended from Jason and Jesse. So that's the name of the group I'm going to give it. I'm going to call the group Jason Wilson and Jesse Lepper. I'm going to assign a color and I'm going to save it. Then I have to add DP to the group. So it's still another step. So when I add to group, I find this group listed and I put a check mark it. I click on the check mark and then it will add DP to the group. And then this little yellow dot will show up next to his name. And I'll show you that. So back on the match page, here's the match page again. And you can see now that over here on the far right, we can see that I've categorized DP and put him in a group. And if I hover over this yellow dot, it will say Jason Wilson and Jesse Lepper on it. Now, I didn't put that into the slide, but just trust me, if you were on Ancestry and you hover over the dot, you can see what group it is by doing that. Let's do another one. So this is RL. And RL, I did not recognize their name, but they have a tree. So I'm going to look at their tree. And to do that, I'm going to do learn more. Now, I don't know why it says learn more when above it said view match. But anyways, if you click on learn more, or you can click on RL, you can get into the match page. And here's the match page between me and RL. And RL has an unlinked public tree. And these are a little dicey. And some people will tell you not to use them and this and that. But basically, you can use them and just see if they help you. It's unlinked. And so you don't precisely know if it's the right tree. It could be RL's husband's tree. It could be RL's parents' tree. We don't know. RL is not the owner of this kit. Her kit is being managed by somebody else named Barely Home. And so this could be Barely Home's tree. We don't know. So we'll look at the tree. And again, I'm trying to see if I see a place on the tree that I recognize. People's names, the first names, first and last, or just the last names and so forth. So when I get down on the tree, I recognize a bunch of names. I had done a lot of research on this side of my family. And so I had researched, I knew the name Bursby, I knew the name White, I knew the name Daniels. And so I said, yep, these are my people. These are them. So here's where they come into my tree. So here's my tree. And I've got James White and Tacey Smith are a married couple. They're my third great grandparents. I'm descended from their daughter, Lucinda. She's my second great grandmother. Lucinda had a sister named Mary Elizabeth, and she married James Bursby. And so this is the line that RL comes down. And so who are common ancestors? James White and Tacey Smith, because Mary and Lucinda are children of this couple and they're sisters. I go back over here and I want to add my note, which I go over here and add. Again, putting in a lot of detail from the tree. And then I create the group. I call it James White and Tacey Smith, because again, that is the common ancestor couple. I give it the brown color and I add RL to that group down here. Now you just continue going through your matches like that. And again, you're going through and identifying the people that are easy for you to identify. I want you to have success in doing that, to really practice using the tools and the features at the DNA testing companies to do this. And we're skipping the people that we can't identify for now. Now, we're going to go on to MyHeritage and quickly show you what you would do at MyHeritage to do the same steps. So here's the same steps. We want to familiarize ourselves with the DNA match page. So this is what the DNA match page looks like at MyHeritage. And again, remember, these are listed in the order of your closest matches first, and then goes down. And at MyHeritage, you can see I have 15,000 DNA matches. So again, you want to spend most of your time looking at the closer matches, not the distant, the 15,000th match. Don't spend your time down there yet. You got the names of the matches over here, and you've got the estimated relationship here in the middle again. And you've also got your centimorgan amount here. So you really want to play around with all these options again. But let's say I wanted to figure out who this MJ is. Now, again, this is a very close relative of mine. I actually know who it is, but I was interested to see what MyHeritage would say was my relationship with her. And so you can see that they say she could be my grandmother, she could be my half sister, she could be my aunt. Now, based on her age, which is 90 and above, if that's correct, she can't be my half sister. That's just not possible. But what you want to do is you want to click on this question mark here, and this question mark will open up this new screen that shows you some possible relationships. And it's kind of like a family tree chart here. And they give you some explanations, and then they highlight some relationships that they say that it could be. And this person is actually my aunt. So this makes perfect sense. If you want to look at your match page with a match, there are lots of options on the match page, and I haven't shown even half of them. But you want to just familiarize yourself with all of these and click on them and see what they do. Click on the star, click on this call out button, click on this button, click on the contact button, click on view tree. And down here is the tree of your match. And there's some surnames that your match put in. And these are your surnames, and they're comparing the two. And all kinds of options here on the match page. So you want to look at that page and familiarize yourself with it again. Now, remember what I said, MyHeritage is the other company that will give you some family tree hints. They will compare my tree at MyHeritage and the matches tree at MyHeritage. And if they find a common ancestor, they will give me a hint about it. So at MyHeritage, they call this the theory of relativity down here, the theory of family relativity. So this match SK has a tree of 6,000 people, and it says that she is my third cousin according to their theory of family relativity. So I want to view that. I want to, put my eyes on it and double check that this is correct, because it is a theory, and they have it right there in the title that it's a theory. So when you open that up, then they pull out a tree basically, and they're basically going to show you this is SK, and this is her descendancy from this couple. So SK, her dad, her mom, her grandma Helen, Ellis, John, and Nancy. And then it kind of goes sideways. It's a little hard to follow, but John and Nancy are the parents of John Jr., who is my ancestor. And then John Jr. had a daughter named Jessie, Florence Jessie. And then Helen is my grandma, my mom, and then me. So basically, John Lepper and Nancy Allen up here are the shared ancestor couple. And they're saying that SK and I are third cousins based on this theory of relativity. And this is actually correct, because I've met SK before. I've met her dad, talked to them about the family. Her dad's a big family history buff. And so I've actually spoken with him a number of times. And so this is neat how MyHeritage has told us how we could be related. And again, what we want to do then next is we want to make a note of it. So again, we're out here at the list of matches, and over here to the side, there is a notes button there. See that? So when I click on that, here's where I can put in the information about who SK is. And these are privatized. So these aren't the real name of SK or her father. Then I can create a group. Again, you can do that at MyHeritage. So just like we did at Ancestry, I go over here to this box right here and I click on it. And this comes up and says manage labels. And so at MyHeritage, they're calling it a label. But it's basically a group for categorizing your matches again. And you create a new label. So when I create the new label, I put in the name of the common ancestors here. So it was John Lepper, and actually it was Nancy Allen, but for some reason I put down Hannah. So just kind of overlook that. So we're going to call it John Lepper and Hannah Allen here. So I created a group for them. That was the common ancestor couple. And I give it a label color and I say save. And then I add SK to that group, the John Lepper, Hannah Allen group, and apply. So that's how you do it at MyHeritage. And then we're going to move on to 23andMe. Now, 23andMe, again, we've got the same steps that you want to go through. So whatever the testing company is, you want to do the same steps. So at 23andMe, you have this, your DNA relatives page. This is your list of matches. And again, you have the names of the matches over here. You can see at MyHeritage, or at 23andMe, I only have 1,500 matches. This is because 23andMe decided to limit the amount of matches that they give you. They're giving you your top 1,500 matches, basically. And over here is the estimated relationship. Now, this looks more definitive than some of the other companies, right? This kind of looks like, yeah, this is your second cousin. They don't show any flexibility there, but these are still estimates, and it leads a lot of people astray. I wish 23andMe would be a little more clear on this matter, because it leads people astray. I have people that will write me and say, oh, well, it says that they're my second cousin on 23andMe. And I'm like, well, that's an estimated relationship. And then they ask me, well, why does it say second cousin then? I don't know. It's just the way 23andMe decided to display that. So the person that we're going to look at here is DR. To view the match with DR, we can just click on his name. And here it tells us kind of like a little more information. It says he's my second cousin, but then down here, it will give us a little more flexibility on it. They say predicted relationship, may share a set of great grandparents. You could also be from a different generation or share only one ancestor. So they give you some wiggle room there. DR is not my second cousin. I do know that for sure. Now, if we view more of the match, again, you want to investigate all of these options here on the match page. And I'm not showing you all the options that are on the match page. I'm showing you some of them. So you've got his name, you've got his birth year, you've got his location, you've got message. This is where you can send DR a message. Family background, this is my family background that I entered, and then this is DR's family background that he entered. You can see that DR entered some family surnames, and I apparently didn't. I thought I did, but they're not showing up. One of his family surnames happens to be Allen, and you know that my name is Allen, so that piqued my interest right there and led me to believe that DR is on my father's side and is probably related through my Allen line. And there's a line down here that says family tree. And if I had a family tree listed, or if he had a family tree listed, it would be listed here. Most of the time, they're not family trees on 23andMe because people don't know how to enter it. Now, there is, however, this thing up here that says DR is in your family tree. What does this mean? So you can view your family tree here. This is very confusing, I think. So this is actually not my family tree. This is a tree that 23andMe put together, and it's a speculative tree. So basically, they have tried to put my matches on this tree and group them into family groups. So you can see down here at the very bottom over here, there's me. There's my mom, there's my dad. So this is my dad's side of the tree that they have put DR on, which is right because he's an Allen of some sort. There's my dad. This is my grandparents. You can see this line going up here to my grandparents. And 23andMe doesn't know which grandparent is which. So they're just showing that one grandparent goes up this way. And they don't show any matches. Well, no, this match here, CA, is supposed to be from this grandparent. This other grandparent here has a bunch of matches descended from him, from his side of the family, NG, CS, DR. So this is just my 23andMe's way of trying to group my matches for me in some kind of meaningful way. But it also leads people astray again because it makes them think that this is really a family tree. that is accurate and is showing the accurate relationships between them and their matches. And it's not, it's a speculative tree. So you want to treat this with some caution, but it could be helping you group them into the side of the family that they're on. You could use it that way, but I certainly wouldn't take it for the gospel truth. Now, you'll notice that on 23andMe, there's few family trees, like I said. So it's harder to tell how you're related to an ancestor, to a match, if you can't see their family tree. There's no place to make notes for yourself. So remember how we added those extensive notes about how we were related to those people at Ancestry and MyHeritage. We can't do that at 23andMe. There's also no way to create a group of matches. You can't group like matches together. You can't make a group of the descendants of your great-grandparents, for instance. And that family tree function that we just talked about is speculative. So you want to treat that with caution. Now, I would suggest that you keep paper notes of how you're related to your matches at 23andMe, or you could do a spreadsheet. You could do some kind of computerized accounting of it, but you're going to have to create that yourself and keep it yourself, because there's no way to make those notes within the 23andMe interface, unfortunately. So they don't make it as easy on you as Ancestry and MyHeritage do. Family tree DNA. So family tree DNA is often abbreviated as FTDNA, and it's the Family Finder test, which is the autosomal test. So again, you're going to use the same steps that we use for the other companies. You want to familiarize yourself with the match list. And this is a particularly busy match list. There's a lot going on here. So again, you're clicking on all of these different options and you're playing around with them, playing around with a search, the sort, the export, anything that's clickable, view details. That's an invitation to view details. These are clickable over here. This is clickable, assign relationship. So many, many things are clickable. You want to play around with it. So here's the name of the match over here. Here's the estimated relationship. And again, Family Tree DNA uses the dash. So they're very vague with their relationship estimates. And I think that helps. I think that helps people to realize that it's really an estimate and it's not set in stone. So this person is my second to fourth cousin. So there's a whole bunch of relationships that they could be. Now, Family Tree DNA does not help me try to figure out what that relationship is. There's nothing for me to click to understand it better. So I want to look over here at the shared DNA, 150 centimorgans, and remember that. And then I'm going to want to take it to the shared centimorgan project that we talked about earlier. That's at dnapainter.com. And I could put in 150 centimorgans and get a list of possible relationships. So that's what you want to do in conjunction with Family Tree DNA, because otherwise you're going to be kind of lost. You could also look at your DNA Detective Green relationship chart and do the same thing. So if you want to view a match, you can click on the match's name. So when we view LR, we are going to see the profile. I can get her email address. I can see her ancestral surnames, and there's other things to do there as well. So you want to take a look at that. I can also view her tree, but that's from this main page. See over here, that little diagram there is actually a family tree diagram. When I click on her family tree, I see a family tree pop up and I see people that I recognize. Again, we talked about them earlier, James White and Tacey Smith. Well, this lady is also descended from them. And the ancestors in common are my third great grandparents, James and Tacey. I can make a note in Family Tree DNA. So I go up here to this note field here, and I can type in all that information from that tree and say exactly how I'm related to LR. And that's what you want to do, again, because she might take her tree down, because you might forget how you're related to her. Now, at Family Tree DNA, again, there are fewer family trees. So not everybody puts one up, but if they do, it's great. It's good help. And there's no way to create groups of matches. So I can't create a group of matches like I did at the other companies. So Again, you might want to take paper notes or do a spreadsheet or computerized listing of how you're related to all of your different matches. So that was a real quick overview. And like I said, I'm going to be working on a part 2 to this talk that goes into more detail and gets more out of the beginner phase into kind of an intermediate phase. But this is what I've got for you tonight.